Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever and however you're listening to the podcast. We appreciate that you are. This is the Delaware High School Football Pod presented by Websites for Sports, and we're the only media outlet dedicated exclusively to high school football here in the First State. The pod is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and also on YouTube for those who you prefer to see what you're listening to. Follow us on X and on Facebook. All right, Marty, we're at the halfway mark. All but one team has played 5 games. The one that has played 6 is Lake Forest. We have 4 undefeated teams still, and we have 3 winless teams that hopefully will get in the winning column. We don't want to see any team run the board
No.
and not win a game. We had an exciting big win on Thursday and an exciting big win on Saturday. On Friday, and Saturday was kind of back and forth. I couldn't get a handle on what exactly was going
Yeah.
on Saturday. Some good games, some blowouts. 5 homecoming games,
Yeah.
four wins. So that's what they try to do on homecoming.
That's right.
Schedule a
That's
win.
right.
So we'll all get into it. But before we do, the title sponsor of the Delaware High School Football Pod is Websites for Sports, created and managed by Brian Ryder, and it's the only place you can find the schedule of every high school team in Delaware. On that schedule, it tells you the home team, the away team, and the location of the game, including maps and directions. Also has statistics now, which is a great feature that they've added. It's a one-stop shop for all the schedules and everything you need to know, whether you follow high school sports because you're a parent, a fan, or even a player. My favorite feature is the schedule alerts. I talk about this all the time. You can set it up so you can get alerted about schedule additions, deletions, or just changes in the schedule for whatever team at whatever level you want. But the bottom line is, if you have a child playing middle high school sports or you're just a fan, this is the only website that you can rely on to have accurate schedules. We can't thank Brian Rudder from Websites for Sports enough for what they do for interscholastic sports, and of course their sponsorship of the podcast is just another way they're supporting interscholastic athletics. That's websites, the number 4sports.com, websites, the number 4sports.com. All right, Marty, only one game on Thursday night. 2 games, actually. The NFL game
Yeah.
and Woodbridge and Laurel in a big showdown downstate in that Class 2A District 3. And Marty, I was looking at that division.
Oh
there could be
man.
there could be 5 teams going to the playoffs from
Yeah,
there
it's loaded down there.
when it's all said and done. But anyway, it was a big 2A District 3 game. One player did all the scoring for Woodbridge, and Marty, we had another game come down to a missed, extra point. That's where I was
Yep.
getting the X in there. And it, you don't want to say it cost a team a game because it got missed and one way or the other. But if they had made it, the game would have gone into overtime or at least been extended at that point. So it was a good game to start off the week for football here in Delaware.
It was. It was Woodbridge. It seems like they play these games all the time over the last few years. There's a lot of 1-point games. This one, and just to clarify, the extra point was actually blocked a bit on this one, so there's a little out
Yep.
for the kicker there. So the line just collapsed on this. It was funny. It was Markel Clark for Woodbridge who blocked it, and he was quoted in the newspaper saying, "I noticed on their first extra point, the operation was really slow." And he thought if he could get a jump off the line, he said, "I know I can get in there." And sure enough, he does, and it ends up winning the game for them. Malachi Hayes ran for a pair of touchdowns for Woodbridge. Their game, both of these teams, this was um, neither team's going to air it out a lot, and
Fast
there's a
game.
lot of running. Yeah, yeah. Both these coaches, Joey Jones and Marvin Dooley, are going to run the ball a ton. They both did in this game. It was a fun game to watch. It was, went right down to the wire. You weren't really sure which way it was going to go, but Woodbridge's defense has been so strong this season. It's just Marvin, they had that one really bad year, and then all of a sudden they seem to be right back on track. And it's built the same way he's built every one of his winning teams in the past: a strong running game and a stout defense. And that's what they did here. It's a big win for Woodbridge.
Yeah, I think both these teams are getting into playoffs when it's all said and done. So I don't think it affects the playoffs. But of course, they'd love to have that first seed if they can, and so they're
Yep.
battling for that as well. Both Woodbridge is 4-1. They're going to head to Milford, also 4-1, and Laurel is 2-3. They're going to head to Seaford, also 2-3. So a pair of matchups. And again, the majority of games now are inter-districts or
Yes.
intra-districts. I always get that
Intra
screwed up.
district. Yeah.
They're playing within their own district at this point. The out-of-class games are done, and most of the out-of-district teams are done as well. All right, another thriller for Appaquinimec. They go down to the castle, as I called it. Looked like they were cooked, and I don't mean because they were getting blown out at any point, but it just felt, Marty, I watched this game from home for a lot of different reasons. One, I could watch three other games at the same time, but
Yep.
it just felt like Appo was not going to come away with a win, and I don't know what it is. And again, I've watched almost every play between PA announcing for him at home and going to the away games. I've watched about every play, and I don't know. I had a gut feeling that it just wasn't going to work out. Jack Talley misses his first ever extra point. I think
Yep.
I think it's the first time he's missed in his 2-year career. And it's funny. Benny Mitchell announced his perfect record right before that,
Yes.
so we'll call it the Benny effect.
There you go.
We mean that in fun, of course. Benny Mitchell was on the call down there, and. But it just, something didn't feel right. But sure enough, they came back and won. Sussex Central led at the half, 16-14. They lost their quarterback, Bradley
Yeah.
Chavez. He went out. We hope he's okay. Not sure. We'll see. But it was Josiah Cannon, the sophomore, who came in, and he didn't do anything spectacular. But in John Wells' offense, Marty, the quarterback doesn't ever have to do anything
No.
spectacular. They just got to make sure they don't get a delay a game penalty. Everybody's on the same page. And they hand off to the right guy out of the 12 guys coming out of the backfield. At least that's
Yep.
how it felt. And so, sure enough, Noah Hoff scores the game-winning touchdown, and Josiah Rogers had a huge game catching ball, and he made 2 catches, Marty. And I know you didn't tune in till later in this game; you were watching others. If you had watched this and not known anything about him, you said that guy's going to play D1. Well, he certainly is. Penn State's already offered, and he's already committed. But he showed, he just had 2 spectacular catches. If people didn't watch it, go back and watch the replay. Both of them were in the first half, and so Appo pulls it out, stays undefeated. Sussex Central is still right there.
Oh, yeah.
They're right. Maybe not. They're not in that top echelon with Sally's, and we have to start thinking about putting Appaquinimec there. Of course, we'll find out in a couple of weeks when they play them. But just a great game, a great win for Coach Timpson and Appaquinimec, especially to go down there on a Friday night. Tough place to play, and they came away with a victory.
I had the same exact feeling throughout this game. I even in the fourth quarter, I thought, it just Sussex Central, they win at the castle. Benny always likes to say that they are the kings of that castle. I mean, it's
Right.
very tough to go down there and beat them. Boy, Desai Drummond again was just incredible. 3 touchdown passes. He ran for one. That fourth down throw, the game-winning touchdown to Noah Hoff on the crossing pattern. First of all, the defender was in pretty decent position. That's not an easy throw to make.
No.
And it was just, he placed it perfectly. It wasn't a bullet pass. It had touch on it. It was perfectly placed. And it gave Noah the opportunity to immediately make the turn toward the end zone after he caught the ball. So extremely impressed with those guys. And you pointed out, and I hadn't even thought about this, but Josiah Rogers had such a monster game that it's forcing all the other receivers to be in one-on-one situations now because they're doubling Josiah Rogers.
Right.
So, and that worked perfectly there. And these guys were beating double team coverage the last couple of years. It's not like, they get in one-on-one coverage. You're going to see a lot more from these guys as well. So Desai Drummond continues to impress. The Appo defense, they come through when they have to. It's definitely a bend, but and sometimes break defense. But it's funny at the very end of the game. Speaking of Josiah Cannon, he hits that one pass that you're thinking all of a sudden, oh my God, they still have a chance to win this thing.
Yeah.
I think it was a 47-yard pass that got them down there, and then. You had mentioned this to me before that Leighton Von Brand, I guess, said in the paper he was expecting that play because they didn't have time to call another play. Excuse me. There was one really interesting aspect to this, and I kept thinking throughout the game, why wasn't Escobar Gonzalez, Rodney Escobar Gonzalez, their kicker? Why wasn't he kicking extra points and field goals? And so I finally looked it up, and then I heard from another parent. And they said, well, he's at a soccer game up at Brandywine, which is what you get with the two-sport athletes.
Yep,
We
exactly.
always say, hey, get a soccer player, but there's a risk that this is going to happen sometimes. And so he was not there because my first thought was at the end of the game when they got down and it was 3rd and goal, I thought, spike it and kick the field goal and let's go into overtime. But of course, he wasn't there, and they had some problems with the extra points through no fault of anybody's. I mean, when your starting kicker's not there, your starting kicker's not there.
Nothing
So
you can do about it.
no. As you said, Bradley Chavez going out, I think that slowed the Sussex Central offense a bit, gave Appo a little more confidence. Josiah Cannon did a nice job of handling the offense. It certainly wasn't a big drop off. This is a huge win for Appo. I mean, they keep playing with fire, but
Yep.
they keep coming out with the win. They're 5-0. I said to you, I could not for the life of me, and this is, no offense to Coach Timpson, I could not figure out the squib kick at the end of the game at all. I'm thinking, oh my God, why are you going to give these guys the ball at the 45-yard line? But and I said, man, that last minute was hectic. But you know what? They're 5-0 at the end of the day.
Yeah,
So congratulations to Appo. Not a huge loss for Sussex Central, as you said. They're right there in that same tier.
right.
So this was just a really fun high school game on a Friday night.
Yeah, and I know I texted you back. I thought my explanation of the squib kick was maybe it didn't go as far as it was supposed to go. Jack Talley's got such a good leg, and he was the one kicking off. He could get it into the end zone. He could get
Yep.
it up high, and they could catch it. But the higher you kick the ball, the more time they have to set up. Your guys have more
Yep.
time to get down, but they have more time to get set up. So, my thinking is maybe the squib kick was supposed to go one more thing to the
And
next
it was
line.
cut off by a mid-range
Right.
player. So and
Yeah.
that definitely could have been the case. They expected that to go a little further on the ground.
Yeah, and it was a good squib kick by Talley, who probably
Yep.
doesn't practice that a whole lot. He
No.
obviously practices extra points and field goals because he's perfect on field goals and
Yeah.
has now only missed one extra point with 20 plus some attempts. So another good job by that unit, Hank Malady, Noah Hoff, and Jack Talley on the extra points there. So 6 lead changes in that game, which, it made it an exciting game to watch
Yep.
For sure. And again, the
And
Appo, good.
I'm sorry, just real quick, I would say Malik Bell. He's 2 seconds away from being the hero of this game.
Yeah.
Getting to 230 yards rushing. It was just that last play was so rushed. They're just both sides. The defense has the upper hand there to me because the offense without your starting quarterback
Right.
is in such a hurry to get that play off, and they're just doing anything they can to make sure they get the snap before time runs out. So Malik Bell still ends up with a monster game: 40 carries for 226 yards and 4 touchdowns, and he was set to deliver that last blow, but they just ran out of time, weren't able to set up properly.
I'll say more of my comments about Edge Von Brandt's defensive efforts on that last play of the game during the helmet sticker segment. There's a little tease for you there. And Marty, how about being a quarterback and having the last name of Cannon?
I love that. Yeah.
Not bad. All right, Appoquinimink undefeated. They're going to host St. Mark's. St. Mark's is 2-3 now, coming off that loss to Cape. Marty, you got to make sure it's not a game you look past because Appo's got Sally's the weekend after. So you got to
Right.
look that it's not a trap game. I like for Appoquinimick's sake that it is a home game. And so, that's a little bit better. They always get a big crowd there for that. But St. Mark's should have a decent crowd as well. Sussex Central suffers their first loss. They're at Cape, who is 4-1 now. So that'll be a big District 2 game in Class 3A there. All right, every senior has a story to tell, and at Andre L Photography, they bring these stories to life. Their portraits go beyond the traditional, capturing the essence of who they are in the pivotal moment of their lives. They create senior portraits that tell the authentic story of each student and their hard work. Celebrate your senior's journey by booking a session today on AndreLphotography.com. That's AndreLphotography.com. My wife and I did this, as I always mention, and we couldn't have been more thrilled with the pictures that came out of it. Recommended Andre Smith to a lot of people, and he's come through for them as well. All right, next up, Archmere and DMA. It was one of the few cross-district games that were still left, Archmere in District 2, DMA in District 1. And I was thinking, Marty, this win maybe wraps up a home field game, at least in the first round for Archmere, looking at their schedule going forward. We'll see. You got to play it out. You got to play the games, obviously. But I looked at this as kind of this loss makes DMA's next game a little bit more important, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I'll let you talk about this Archmere DMA game.
This was a great win for Archmere because you're coming off of that just blowout loss at Caravel, which of course everyone's getting blown out by Caravel, so not a big stigma there. But you still want to come out and make sure you look at the schedule. And the next game is DMA. They're not an easy game by any means, especially defensively. It's 7-7 game at the halftime at halftime. So you're not sure which way it's going to go. And then Archmere uses a 13-0 run in the third quarter. Jack Bradley, great numbers for him for Archmere. 6 carries, 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 160 total yards. Christian Whitmire, 8 tackles. He also rushed 7 times for 32 yards. The offensive line for Archmere was great. They really grounded out in the second half. Archmere ended up running for 216 yards on 31 carries. So this was a big win for Archmere. DMA, it seems like forever ago that they got off to that 2-0 start, and that second win was the big win against Delmar.
Yep.
And all of a sudden they play 2 3A teams, and they kind of take it on the chin there, as we expected they probably would. Mm-hmm. This was the first game back into the fray, and they acquitted themselves well. They have a young quarterback, the Brantley kid. He's doing a nice job. They're close. They're close, but Archmere right now is just a step above. And Coach John Belace, I mean, every year these guys, he just has his team ready to go, and they win these close games.
Yeah.
They come out of nowhere at the end of the season. You think they weren't impressive to watch, and then all of a sudden they're 8-2, 7-3, and they're one of the top seeds in the playoffs. So Archmere keeps marching along. This was a great bounce back win after that Caravel loss.
And Archmere's well-disciplined team. They don't get a lot of penalties. They don't make a lot of turnovers. And, as we talk about, if you limit penalties and you limit turnovers, you're going to have a better shot to win
Yep.
than those who don't. They're 4-1. They play at Mount Pleasant, and then they host Tower Hill, both winnable games. And then they take on Howard. And that game will probably be to see who wins that District 2 in Class 2A and gets the automatic bid into the playoffs. The MI has Red Lion next. And the reason that game is important, Marty, is because then they have three what we'll call very winnable games,
Yes.
and then they play Caravel. So there are 2-3 right now. These last 5 games, if you go 2-3, you're 4-6, and
Yep.
that's not a good recipe to get into the Class 2A playoffs in particular. If they flip that and they go 3-2, then you're at least 5-5. And that gives you, obviously a better chance than if you're 4-6. If I think I've got to either beat Red Line or Caravel, it doesn't take a rocket science to decide which one of those two games is more winnable. And that's why that's a big game for DMA coming up. So.
Agreed. Yeah. And the bonus points that DMA, if they can get to 5-5, they're going to be in good shape bonus points wise. So, yeah, you're right. An important stretch coming up for them.
All right, next we go to Caravel Academy, but not for the Caravel game, but for the Caesar Rodney Hudson game at Hudson game, at 11 o'clock on Saturday. Caesar Rodney pulls out their second win, first win since they beat a William Penn team, which appears to not be a playoff team.
Right.
So not sure how big of a win that was. It was at the time, obviously, opening up the season with that, but they get a 3-point lead. And the odds were stacked. If you're a betting man and if the Vegas had lines, Hudson would be the favorite in this. They're at home. They're playing on Saturday morning, which every Hudson program is comfortable doing. They've been playing on Saturday mornings forever. And Caesar Rodney, the opposite. This was their first Saturday morning of the season. And Marty, I don't care what anybody says. If you're used to playing on Friday night, playing on a Saturday morning changes everything. I remember that as a high school basketball player and soccer player. A Friday night game is one thing. If you got to get up and go play competitively on Saturday morning, it's a whole different situation. And so, I'm going to call this a big upset, and at least on paper, a big upset. And Hudson's struggling, and it's not a good loss for a Hudson team that still has a tough road ahead.
No, you're right. This was a real surprise for Caesar Rodney. It's funny you mention that because I was thinking the same thing. I actually written some things. It's like when you're a high school football player and you're playing Caesar Rodney, your schedule probably starts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon where you really start gearing up and getting ready. Now all of a sudden it's like 6 o'clock in the morning where you have to start this routine and you got a long bus ride ahead. So I agree. I think this was a huge win for Caesar Rodney, a head scratcher for Hudson. They the same bugaboos with them. It's the penalties and it's the turnovers. 5 turnovers for Hudson in this game, including an interception that was returned 20 yards for a fourth quarter touchdown, which ultimately proved the cushion because it gave CR a 31-21 lead. Hudson came back and got one final touchdown, but then CR was able to run out the clock. And I think they might have actually had an interception to end the game. But Julius Timmons, the senior quarterback, I've been impressed with him. Even when they've been losing games, he's a kid with a lot of athletic ability, played really well yesterday, ran for 60 yards for a touchdown, threw a touchdown. Dionysius Alston added a short touchdown. They got a 42-yard field goal from Brody Hinkle, which I love the kicking game in Delaware. It seems to be at an all-time best.
Win by 3 without the field goal.
That's right. I mean, without the field goal, it doesn't happen. Yep. That gave them a 24-21 lead. As I said, the interception then increased that to 10. CR, this was a huge game, a huge win for them. They get that second 3A win. And of course, they turn around and they go to Smyrna next week, which is licking their wounds. So probably not going to be a pretty game for CR, but you never know. I mean, they go up to Hudson and they take the win, and Smyrna is a team that's kind of struggling along right now, but this was a huge win for CR. And I think I tweeted, this is almost, it feels like a devastating loss for Hodgson. This was one, if you're Hodgson, no game is automatic. But as you say, you and I talked during the week and stuff, we mark these things, this is probably a win. It's a long
Right.
drive up. It's a morning game, and it didn't turn out that way. It was kind of a mess for Hodgson again. So Dave Collins and his kids, boy, they got a lot of work to do if they're going to make the playoffs at this point.
Yeah, they got to regroup. Congratulations to Sean Strickland. It's the first time CR has won 2 games in a season since 2020, Marty. And I would have, 10 years ago, if you had told me that the next
Yep.
10 years would be like that, I would have told you were crazy.
You
This
know
is a
what? Real
team.
quick,
Yep.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I had written this down too. This matches the total win number of the last 3 seasons. Their last 3 seasons, they won 1-1-0 games. So with 2 wins, yeah, isn't that? It's incredible the way things have changed down there. But maybe this is something they build on now.
Yeah, maybe it's starting in the other direction. Who knows? Because
Yep.
it is a head scratcher. Because some of these programs that were powerhouses once, and I'll use Newark as an example because I cover them. When I went in and saw Butch Simpson have a preseason practice, there were 150 kids there. And
Yep.
if you didn't show up on day one, you didn't bother showing up on day two. And that's not the case anymore. There, it's not that case there in a lot of places. But CR, that hasn't changed. They still get 100 kids who come
They
out from the
do.
football program.
Yep.
And they're not transferring to other places. Where are you transferring to? Especially now, and that'll be another thing. I'm sure they've lost some kids to Dover in the past few
Yep.
years because Dover was in the state championship game one year, semifinals the other year. That's going to change at least for now, it appears.
Yep.
And so we'll see if that prevents that from happening as well. But you mentioned who CR plays. They're heading to Smyrna. Hudson in a similar boat. They're going to be big underdogs at Middletown,
Oh,
and a tough place to play, whether Middletown's good or not. And they're
yeah,
really good. But
exactly.
yeah, if you're Coach Collins, I think you use this as guys, we have nothing to lose.
No.
Let's go in. They're going to be looking past us. Doesn't matter who they play next. They're going to be looking past us. Let's take advantage of that. Let's play smart football. Let's limit the penalties, limit the turnovers. And if it's a close game in the fourth quarter, you never know what's going to happen.
Yep.
So we'll be interesting to see how that works out. All right. If you're looking to buy or sell your house, Mary Kate Johnston with Remax Associates will help you do it as if it was her own, just like she did with my wife and I 20 years ago. And we've since recommended her to plenty of people, and they've all been very happy. Whether it's a first home or an upsize or downsize for yourself, an aging parent, or one of your kids, do yourself a favor and reach out to Mary Kate Johnson with Remax Associates and let her make sure that you get the best value possible, whether you're buying or selling or both, like my wife and I were doing. Her website is marykatej.remax.com. That's marykatej.remax.com. And there you can also check out her multiple 5-star reviews on Zillow and read what others have said as well. All right, Marty, we go to our quick hits section, and this is where we maybe talk about a game that was a blowout, but there was something significant that happened, or it had some meaning, or something like that, or we might not have a lot of stats for one reason or another, and but we still think it's important. We'll start with Cape and St. Mark's. Cape comes away with the 21-7 win. It was the first 3A win for Cape. Their other loss was to Hudson in the 3A division. It was the first 3A loss for St. Mark's. They had beaten St. George's and CR to kind of keep themselves on the top of that lower tier bubble. Cape led 14-7 at the half. A big defensive effort by St. Mark's kept Cape out of the end zone to end that first half. I was following that game along on TV, and I thought, if they punch that in there at the end of the first half, it's going to be over. And it wasn't, so they did a nice job at that. Cape defense shut out the Spartans in the second half. They forced 4 turnovers total in the game, so another game with a lot of turnovers. And so it was a great, it was homecoming, and that was one of the 4 homecoming wins that I talked about. So a really nice win there for Coach Mike Frederick. A game that if you're going to make the playoffs and you're going to be a legitimate team, and you're Mike Frederick talking to your team, when St. Mark's comes to town on homecoming, we got to beat them. And they did.
And St. Mark's has a lot of weapons. Elijah Burke, James Campbell, who unfortunately James Campbell was injured in that game. Hopefully he's going to be back soon. I know he tried to make a go of it in the second half, wasn't able to do so. So St. Mark's went with their backup. This was a nice win for Cape because St. Mark's had been scoring points, for one thing. Right. So their defense just really shut them down. And I'll be honest, watching the game, I was very impressed with St. Mark's. They hung in there a lot. Their defense is very stout. They just couldn't find enough offensively. And to the point you made earlier, the turnovers, in St. Mark's losses, that has just absolutely been the bugaboo for them. They turn the ball over. They had a number of 4 and outs where they turned the ball over on downs to Cape. The Cape defense came up strong. I said Cape led 14-7 at the half. The only touchdown in the second half was the first drive by Cape, and it was Jamison Tingle capped a 62-yard drive with an 11-yard pass to Osmir Batson. So I was impressed with St. Mark's. For Cape, this was a big win. It was, we joke about the three 2A teams they play at the beginning of every season, and then they lose their first 3A game. This was a big win for them to get in the 3A win column. And Mike Frederick, that team, they're always strong now. Ever
Right.
since he took over there, they're not a easy out at all.
No.
And I again defensively, I thought was where they kind of hung their hat against St. Mark's. James Campbell going out hurt them a bit, but even then, St. Mark's was struggling to turning the ball over again. Situations where they go for it on fourth down and can't get it. So I was really impressed with that Cape defense. Nice win for the Vikings.
For those of you that don't know, Coach Mike Frederick used to play professional football for the Ravens. And Marty, I've said this from the first time he stepped on the field. I don't know. I can't remember if it was 1 year. I think it was 2 years ago is when he
Hmm.
started. He carries himself on the field. You know what he reminds me of is Tom Landry of the Cowboys. And he
Yep.
just carries himself. He doesn't get overexcited about good plays.
No,
He
the
doesn't
quiet
get overexcited
confidence.
about bad plays. I've never seen him yell at a player. Now, again, I'm not watching just him when I'm watching these games, but he just carries himself very professionally. And we root for him. We root for guys like that.
Yep.
And so, congratulations to him with that. All right, next we go to Mount Pleasant and Tower Hill. A close game, 36-33 win for Mount Pleasant. And Marty, the storyline here is Mount Pleasant is 4-1 on the
Right.
season because you can argue that three of those four wins are against potentially non-playoff teams, but a good team wins those
You got
games.
to win those games. Yep.
And that's what they're doing. They're winning those games. They have not had a winning record after 5 games since 2015, so almost a decade. And so
Yep.
that really is the storyline here for Mount Pleasant. They're in that Brandywine School District. Concord's suffering. Brandywine's battling to stay, to finish 500, and Mount Pleasant's 4-1 right now. So, I thought that was a good win for them, and we'll see here where they go from here. They've got to play Archmere and Red Lion. So
Yeah.
it's good they have that winning record before we face them.
Yes.
But again, just like Hudson can go to Middletown, Mount Pleasant can go to both Archmere and Red Lion and say, look, we got nothing to lose. Let's play our
Yep.
hearts out and hope we come away with a win. But a good win for Mount Pleasant to get the 4-1.
It is, and I kind of put this in the upset column too. Jeff Allen's done a really nice job since he's taken over there. This is a tough place to win.
Yep.
And Tower Hill had been scoring some points. Kevin Wasko, the quarterback, has done a really nice job this season. But and I had to really hunt down the information on this one because I couldn't get information anywhere. But Mount came back from a 12-0 deficit. Quarterback Ashton Emmerich and Jaden Scott connected for 2 long TDs. What I could tell is it looked like both were 80+ yards. Scott also added a kickoff return for a TD over 80 yards. And then Tower Hill, I think Tower Hill was down by about 10 late in the game, made a late rally, but the Mount Pleasant defense held on. So a great win for Mount Pleasant. Tower Hill's struggling this year. They're really having a tough time. Again, 4-1 is 4-1, and Jeff Allen would love to get this team back into the playoffs. I will, in all honesty, say you totally screwed up my trivia question at the end by some information you gave. I'm thinking to myself, I wrote myself a note, tell John trivia question before we go on air from now on.
Hey,
But no, we'll
do it anyway. We'll tell
There
who,
you go.
who listens to the whole podcast and just
That's
doesn't
right. This
tune
is
into
a
the
test.
trivia question.
This is a test of who listens to everything. That's right. So a big win for Jeff Allen and Mount Pleasant. And it's great to see a school like Mount Pleasant rolling along a little bit. As you said, winnable games, yes, but still 4-1 is 4-1. They look good.
And if I had an answer to one of your trivia questions, Marty, it must be a simple one this week. Tower Hill finishes. They're 3-2 now. They're going to go to Tatnall, who is undefeated, and Archmere, who is 4-1. So they've got two tough
Yes.
games ahead. Of course, one is down to Class 1A. The other one is going to be within their district. So that's going to be a big game there. All right. So our next games for quick hits are teams that won their first games. And Marty, these always make me happy because
Yep.
nobody wants to go. I was thinking about it. Football is the one sport of all of the high school sports where you probably have the greatest chance to not win a game. Only purely because you only get 10 games.
That's right.
Basketball, it's 20 plus or whatever it is. Soccer, it's 15. Baseball, it's 20, or whatever it is. And so you're bound to, even if you're the worst team in the state, you're bound to get lucky once. Football, that doesn't always happen. So we're
No.
happy for these teams. Newark defeats Delcastle 23-22. It's a score you'd expect between two teams with no with only one win going
Yep.
into that, and that of course was Delcastle. So congratulations to Tyron Rice, the new head coach at Newark. He of course won games at Charter School of Wilmington, so it's not his first ever win as a varsity head coach, but it certainly is his first one as the Yellow Jackets. So a nice win for Newark. We'll see if they're able to put together two in a row coming up, but that was a good win for Newark, Marty.
It was, and this I would put this in the upset category as well. I thought Delcastle coming off their first win, and they didn't. It's not like they got blown out here, this 1 point win. I couldn't find a single piece of information anywhere. I reached out to a couple different people, still couldn't come up with anything. So Newark, hey, when you win games, we'd love to talk about you, but you got to get us the information. So yeah, nice win for Tyron Rice to kind of get off the schneid there. They got off to a really rough start, but it's a win is always something to build on. It's always great to come to practice and or the film session on Sunday or Monday afternoon, and you feel a lot much better about yourself, and the week tends to be a lot better. So maybe this could be a little spark for Newark.
Well, they're going to have to light the spark because here's their second half schedule, Marty, for the five games: Howard, Caravel, DMA, and Red Lion.
Oh,
And so they've got a rough road ahead, but hey, you got to go and play the games,
they
and
might
so
need a
do your opponents.
bonfire for this one. Yeah.
Delcastle, two of their three games left are winnable. We'll let people look up their schedule and
Yeah.
decide whose those are. All right, athletes and students of all ages, unleash your potential with the Win the Day Planner, your key to building winning habits for a lifetime. This planner was put together by a longtime wrestling coach and teacher, Dan Rigby, who's led Caesar Rodney and Milford to multiple state titles. He has nearly 2 decades of experience teaching and coaching students of all ages. And, this planner that he put together originally was for student athletes for one season. It's now been expanded for student athletes for all season. And they've even stepped outside the box and put one together for just students. And Marty, I know you've talked and I've talked about people who have told us who are adults like you and me, and they use it. And I've got
Yep.
the book and I've looked at it. And when I retire in a couple months, I'm going to be using that to make sure I get done what I expect to get done during the day. You can get your print or digital copy today at winthedayplanner.com. Again, that's winthedayplanner.com for students, student athletes, and quite frankly, for adults. All right, we go to Dover, William Penn. Dover picking up their first win for Maurice Polk, and I believe Marty, it's his first win ever as a high school head coach.
It
His
is.
background,
Yes.
he was an assistant coach a couple places before he went to the collegiate level, where he was an assistant coach as well. This was another homecoming game that was a win, and so just a good win for Dover, a solid win. If Dover, and Marty, I have to say, if William Penn had won, I'm not sure we call it an upset because of
No, I don't
Dover's
think so.
schedule, Dover's results going into it.
Yep.
But I'm also not surprised it was 31-7 when it was all said and done because you just felt that Dover was better than how they were playing and that the scores of their games looked. And again, we'll find out. This is just one game, but
Right.
not an upset, and not sure it would have been either way, but a good win for the Senators.
No, I agree. And yeah, the only thing that surprised me about this was the score because William Penn had been putting up points. I think they had 50 points against Milford. And this just felt like, yeah, Dover felt like they were, there's talent there. We knew
Right.
that. It just hadn't come together yet. And with a new staff and a new system and things like that, it can be difficult to come together. Yeah, the team gave Maurice Polk the game ball, and he said he's going to find a nice little glass case and make sure that he saves this one. And the funny thing is that this one win now puts them right back in the playoff picture
Yep.
in that bottom part of 3A. It's going to be interesting. Shamik Morris had 90 yards on 17 carries, and quarterback Cam Wagner completed 5 of 10 passes, 111 yards and a touchdown. Jaheim Cole had an interception return, 65 yards for a touchdown, which gave them a 24-7 lead and kind of put a cap on that. And another field goal, Cole Turner, 39-yard field goal for Dover. So another kid who's a weapon in the kicking game. William Penn, boy, this is a head scratcher. They're just a Jekyll and Hyde team this year.
Yeah.
One week they look great, the next week not so much, and this week obviously not so much. Again, I would also not have been surprised either way, but the final score definitely surprised me.
All right, so they're going to try to win two straight against St. George's. William Penn, they're now at 2-3. They've got two winnable games left, and I'll help a new trivia question, Marty. Which of the five teams are not among the winnables? Sally's, Middletown, and Appoquinimink. And I'll leave the other
Yeah.
two
Good
winnable
luck with
games
that,
for
right?
people to look up with that.
There you
So,
go.
and that's nothing against William Penn. That's just the reality of
Right.
how
Yep.
good those other three teams are,
Yep.
and nobody's going to argue that. We hope William Penn. Hey, we hope for an upset because that makes things more interesting. We have more to talk about, you know.
Yep. Yep.
So, all right, Dickinson 14, AI DuPont 12. Dickinson picks up its first win. Not only their first win, but it was their first non-running clock game of the season at
That's
some point. Now, again, a running clock can happen in the final 2 minutes of the game. So
yep.
we're not saying that
Yep.
they got blown out by halftime at every game, but I did look that up, and they had been defeated by 35 or more points in each of their previous games, and it was a quarterback and wide receiver who hooked up for both of them. And they've got five winnable games left. And so we'll see. It's the purpose of this was to put these teams in situations where they're playing against other teams that don't
Yep.
play to the level that the big guys do, and it's kind of working out that way. These teams go into the second half of the season knowing, hey, we're in our district now. Now we got a shot to be
Yep.
in games and win some. So it was a good win for Dickinson.
Yeah, I thought this was, I had exactly the same thing written down. This is basically why 1A was created. So teams like this could have competitive games against one another. And I imagine this is probably a fun game to attend, two teams that aren't going to get a lot of wins. The funny thing, and you mentioned it, the next two Rams games are ECHS and McCain, both of whom are really struggling. It's possible that they could take now, again, possible in quotes, they could take a 3-game win streak into a game against Cristiano on October 24th. You never know at that level.
Right.
So, they could lose next week, or if they put this together, again, it gets so wild toward the end of the season at the bottom of the levels for those final few playoff spots in all three levels. But great win for Dickinson and Coach Dubin Word.
All right, Glasgow picks up its first win, 12-7 over Charter School of Wilmington. A much-needed win for the Dragons. Remember, they started out with a tough schedule against 2A teams, Sussex Tech, Red Lion, and I forget the other one, but it wasn't winnable, put it that way. And so the tough schedule to start for them, so it was nice for them to be getting down and playing the other teams in their class. They've got 4 teams left. Remember, Marty, this is a Glasgow team that won their last 4 games last year and snuck into the playoffs
Yep.
with a 4-6 record. Got some help, though, so they don't want to do
They
that
did.
again. But the 4 teams left right now have 4 wins combined. So they're very winnable games for Glasgow. And then you sit back and you watch the numbers and see if it works out for you to get in the playoffs.
Now, this is one of those. How committed are you to the podcast? I watched this game start to finish. It was on, and I love watching games like this. The teams where you really don't hear a lot about these kids, and there was one play. It was the first touchdown of the game. It was Nazir Gardner threw a 35-yard TD pass to. It ended up being Quade Godwin Perez. I think Brad Myers has a different guy, but if you look at the tape, you can clearly see it's number 11 who catches this pass. It bounces off Zaire Tate, who is falling back into the end zone. And as he hits the ground, it hits him on the chest and bounces straight up into the air and goes right to Quade Godwin Perez. So it was a great first touchdown to start the game. Gardner was absolutely blasted, the quarterback, as he let go of the ball. So it was a phenomenal pass. They also got a 23-yard TD run late from Jamar Smith in the first half. Defense played excellent in the second half. Charter lost a lot from last season, and you can see that. They had their opportunities. It's funny, the Glasgow public address announcer had us cracking up a few times. My mom watched this game with me, and at one point, Charter missed a wide open receiver that would have been a touchdown, and the Glasgow PA announcer said, "Wide open receiver missed by Charter." And wow, talk about rubbing it in. It's a woman, and she was fantastic. She was crediting the cheerleaders and things like that. Just a fun part of watching games like this. You get to see these different things. But Jamar Smith finished 20 carries, 135 yards. He also had 9 tackles on defense. Samai Kargbo, 12 tackles and 2 sacks. Zaire Tate, 5 tackles and an interception. So this was a big win for Glasgow against the team. This is a toss-up game. Charter was really looking for a win. They needed a win here, and Glasgow came up with it. So congratulations to Coach Ricky Brown and the Dragons for their first win of the season.
So 4 teams winning their first games of the season. And Marty, not to digress, but the PA announcer thing is funny because I do the PA announcing for Appoquinimink. I have for several years, and I try to do it, and I'm going to use in air quotes for people who aren't watching on YouTube, professionally.
Right.
Meaning I don't do play-by-play from the press box. And when you look at the NFHS rules, because I did this when I started doing PA, you're really not allowed. I mean, you're really not, and you're really not even supposed to sound like you're the home PA guy, which
Right.
that's almost impossible not to do. But it was funny because you say that about that, and then there was another game going on that somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, you ought to be down here listening to this guy," and they did it very sarcastically because what I try to do is I try to not become the show because
Yep.
I'm not a showman in the press box. I'm a play-by-play guy by nature, and we do the podcast where we get, we do funny things here, and this is a show. This isn't a
Right.
game, and but it's just funny the difference when you go from stadium to stadium. And some of those guys are good, even when they're clearly
Uh-huh.
homer guys. But I do have to say, if you're talking about a guy being wide open, missed by the quarterback, that's my guess is somebody's going to say something to that
Yes.
person.
Well, it's funny too. Glasgow took over and they needed three kneel downs to close out the game. And I think it was after the first one, the PA announcer yelled, I guess people were maybe starting to go for the exits, and they said, "Hey, y'all, get excited. We're getting our first win here." And the coach is probably like, "We still got two snaps to go here. Don't jinx it." So it was funny, but it was a great atmosphere. They had a decent crowd, it looked like, at Glasgow. So
Mhm.
it was nice. It was just kind of an entertaining game to watch.
Yeah, and I guess when you're going for your first win, you're in the press box. You're trying to entertain the crowd,
That's
so you
right.
want them to come
That's
back.
right.
All right, next we
Um,
have the Grain Restaurant helmet stickers. Did you have something else, Marty?
Actually, you know what? One game I wanted to hit, we
Sure.
we were going to talk about, I think, Middletown Smyrna quickly.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yes, right. My
yep,
fault. Yep.
that's okay.
Y-
And it was I'm going to scroll back up here to my, of course, Middletown gets the 45-12 win. We got some really good stats from Middletown. So I always love to, you and I love to give shout outs when the coaches
Sure
send them
thing.
to us.
Yep.
So it was Mackay Walker and Amari Glover and Darian Cunningham, which is the quarterback, who's really, really talented, combined to run for over 300 yards against Smyrna. One of the coaches who sent me the information said that Smyrna has routinely held them under 100 yards rushing almost every season they've played under the Judy era, and so this was just a monster game for Middletown. Their offensive line did a phenomenal job. Again, quarterback Darian Cunningham is emerging as one of the state's best. He's going to be someone to watch. He's got a ton of talent. Austin Ham, I love this, the Middletown kicker, 7 of 7 on PATs and a 27-yard field goal. John Parker, who of course is the transfer from Dover to Middletown, had his first real extensive playing time with Middletown. He's coming back from an injury and scored his first Middletown touchdown. So big win for Middletown. And I'm looking, Smyrna, they have absolutely been blasted by the top teams, and it's funny because if you look at their schedule, they're on pace again for a 4-6 or 5-5,
Yep.
and they're going to be one of those lower seeds in the playoffs again. And Smyrna. I was talking to Sean Green online last night. It's like Smyrna is Smyrna. It doesn't matter, what level they're playing
Right.
at. And people have asked me what's going on with Smyrna, and the answer is they're young.
Yeah.
They barely have any seniors on this
Nope.
team, which means next year they're going to be a force
Look
to
out.
deal with. Right now, if you can shut down Enriquez, it takes away a huge part of their offense. These guys are growing by the week, and next year is going to be a different story with Smyrna. So don't get comfortable thinking they're going to be blown out by the big three, the current big three for a while. But this was a monster win for Middletown. They needed this win. I think it was close for a while. Smyrna
Mhm.
really hung in there. They've done that in the first half of some of their games, but
Right.
an awesome performance by the offensive line. I'll have more to say about them in our helmet sticker section. So good win for Middletown.
I found my notes on this game. This was a game we had at the last minute, and I had it tucked away
Yes.
somewhere else. And here were my comments going into this game. Middletown's trying to prove they're still one of the top tier teams because again, their 3A loss is to Sussex Central that
Yep.
just got beat by Appoquinimink. Smyrna trying to stay out of that playoff bubble at the bottom. And I said last week after watching them play twice, once in person and once on tape, that I'm not taking them out of that playoff bubble. Meaning I'm not putting them down in that lower tier playoff bubble
No.
until they prove otherwise. And
Right.
again, this was not one of those prove otherwise games. They have 4 winnable games coming up before week 10 when they play Sussex Central. And that week 10 game against Sussex Central for Smyrna might be a win and you get in, lose, and you're home for Thanksgiving. Well, and it's the not Thanksgiving is
Yeah,
when
the new.
they'll be practicing for the state
Yes.
championship, meaning you're out of the playoffs of Smyrna. And so we'll see what Mike Judy can do. When you got a young team like that, you get better every week, and you don't always see that on the scoreboard.
Yep.
And so I'm going to have to assume these four winnable games coming up are they're either going to win or they're going to be very close
Yep.
with a chance to win at the end. And I don't think I think they're done getting blown out at least till
Oh,
week
I
10.
agree.
And by
Yeah.
week 10, then maybe they're in a better situation for that as well. Middletown has two winnable games coming up next in the next 2 weeks before their showdown with Sally's. And
Yep.
so, again, their job is going to be to make sure they don't look past these next two teams, Hudson and William Penn, which we've already mentioned. Otherwise, that Sally's game doesn't mean quite as much when they get to
Right.
that if they pick up a couple wins here, at least in terms of getting home field advantage and stuff like that. All right, now it is time for our Grain Restaurant helmet stickers. Grain Restaurants were started by two local businessmen and friends on Main Street in Newark, and they've quickly grown into four locations at the Summit Marina on the C&D Canal and Bear, in Lewis at the ferry terminal, and their newest location on the Star campus in Newark across from the stadium. They've become nightly, weekly hangouts for some, gathering spots for special occasions for others, or just a new place to try. My favorite part of Grain is knowing that it was started by two neighbors who had an idea, and that idea came to fruition, and it has flourished. They've put these restaurants, Marty's, in places where restaurants had failed time and time again
Yep.
until they took them over. And they are Jim O'Donohue and Lee Michaels, and they not only support high school sports by supporting our podcast, they support a lot of nonprofits in a lot of different ways throughout the state of Delaware. All right, so what this helmet sticker thing has become is I think you came up with the term, Marty. And, coaches put stickers on the helmets when their kids do something good. And I don't know how much of that goes on anymore. It used to, watch college football and the helmets were plastered with
Yep.
stickers, that type of
Yes.
thing. It doesn't happen in the NFL, I don't think.
No.
And at high schools have gone back and forth. But here's what we do is we try to point out some players that had outstanding games. Keeping in mind that sometimes if it's an outstanding game and their team wins by 50 points, we may not give a helmet sticker out for something like that for listeners. Hey, my kid threw for 4 touchdowns. Yeah, but your team won 65-0 type of thing. But we still try to get as many as we can. Now, a couple guys put them on their helmets. And then with this whole new DIAA name, image, likeness thing, please, folks, don't put these on your helmets because basically it's advertising for us. It was the farthest thing from our mind. In fact, we weren't even going to create stickers for this, but my wife had gotten us stickers just to
Right.
hand out. And we thought, hey, let's give these out to the
This is
helmet
awesome.
guys.
Yeah.
This is awesome, and it
Yeah.
has been because we sent out
Yeah.
about 30 of them since
Yep.
this started. And so I'll say this by if you want your helmet sticker, reach out to us on Twitter or website or however you want to do it, Facebook, and we'll send it to you. Just please don't put it on your helmet. Put it on your iPad, put it on your tablet, put it on your phone, anywhere like that. But
Yep.
please don't put it on your helmet. As much as we would love that, it's
not
illegal,
allowed.
basically.
Yeah.
It's not allowed.
Yep.
So
Yep.
please keep them off your helmet. All right, that's enough of that. So we're going to start with 1A. Marty, I'm going to go with Dickinson quarterback Joe Quigley and wide receiver Jafari Payne because they're
Yep.
the guys, as you mentioned, who connected on the 2 touchdowns for Dickinson to give them their first win, 14-12 over AI. So Joe Quigley and Jafari Payne from Dickinson are my first 1A helmet stickers. And I got one more, but I'll wait to see who you come up with. Go ahead, Marty.
My 1A helmet stickers, I'm going to go with first and this is funny that you mentioned if you win by 65-0. This is actually 64-0. But here's why I'm giving a helmet sticker. It's to the Brandywine PAT unit.
Yep.
And it's holder AJ Chris, long snapper Corey Davis, and kicker Ian Cleghorn. And the reason is because they went 8 for 8 on PATs. That doesn't happen a lot in high school football. As we said, Austin Ham 7 for 7 this week. So the Brandywine PAT unit, AJ Chris, Corey Davis, and Ian Cleghorn get my first one. My other 1A helmet sticker goes to Polytech sophomore Avon Diamond, who scored 3 touchdowns, 2 receiving, 1 on a blocked punt. He kind of did everything for them. So I go to Brandywine and Polytech for my 2 1A helmet stickers.
And Avon Diamond was my second. So I'm
There you
glad
go.
I waited and let you go first. So, all right. So now we go to 2A. My sticker, and I just have one for 2A, is to Malachi Hayes from Woodbridge. He scored all of Woodbridge's points. He rushed for 2 touchdowns, and he scored the 2-point conversion.
Yep.
He ended up with 24 carries for 116 yards. The touchdown runs were 8 yards and 31 yards, so they weren't gimmies by any stretch of the
Yep.
imagination. So Woodbridge's Malachi Hayes is my Class 2A helmet sticker for this week.
And I'm going to Mount Pleasant for my 2A helmet stickers. The first is sophomore quarterback Ashton Emmerich. He had 3 touchdown passes, including 2 covering 80-plus yards. The second goes to Mount Pleasant wide receiver Jaden Scott, who caught those 2 80 yards and returned a kickoff more than 80 yards for a touchdown. So Ashton Emmerich and Jaden Scott get my 2A helmet stickers for Mount Pleasant.
All right, so we go to 3A. I'm going to start with Sussex Central Malik Bell, who, as we said, we could give a helmet sticker to every week. And I know he was player of our week one week, I think, and we gave him a helmet sticker or something like that. 40 carries, 226 yards, 4 touchdowns. Marty, he's averaging 220 plus all purpose yards. So running, returning kicks, returning punts per game. And that's just an incredible number. So Malik Bell for Sussex Central. My other one goes to Edge Von Brandt, the linebacker at Appo. And here's why, Marty. I was listening to different things on the way down to an event I had Saturday morning. And his interview with Brad Myers popped up on Delaware Online. And he talked about how, and if you're just tuning in or you're tuning into this part that we send out as a separate thing during the week, Appo won on a defensive stance where Sussex Central basically ran the third and fourth down with under 10 seconds to play from basically the same spot. It was it was inside the 2 yard line. First one, no good. Second one, they run it with as time, snap the ball, time runs out, so this is it, other than a defensive penalty. Edge Von Brandt sprints from his position on the other side of the ball. This is kind of going to the left, just to give people an image. Kind of going to the left. So Edge Von Brandt is lined up. If he's over the center, maybe he might be a little bit one position further than the center from coming in to get this. And he sprints through the line and grabs him from behind, and that's all it took because he held him, and then everybody piled on him after that. And he pointed out to Brad Myers, he said, I knew what they were going to run because they didn't have time to huddle. And so, you're not barking a play into the quarterback from the sideline like you would in the NFL maybe. And so he said, I knew they were running the exact same play. They had 2 plays to try to score. And so I knew where it was going. I knew how to get there. And that's exactly what he did. And I thought to myself, how about the football IQ of Ed
in that
Von
moment?
Brandt?
Absolutely.
In that moment. And I guarantee you that's going to be a learning lesson for every head coach that they're going to talk to their team about this week is, guys, look, if we get in a situation where another team is in a position where they've got to run 2 plays, bang, bang, they're running the exact same 2 plays. That's just the way it is 99.9% of the time at the high school level. In the NFL, again, they probably run 2 different plays or whatever. And I just thought, a coach could talk about that already. And when you're in the heat of the moment of that play, are you really thinking about that? Or are you just thinking about, I got to make sure I'm not off sides. I got to make sure I'm not the reason this game gets another penalty, that kind of thing. And so I just thought, wow. And I know Ed personally, he plays on the volleyball team with my son. And of course, again, I watch Appo football all the time. And it is just, it's one of the moments I'll probably never forget. You know how we get these things, and I'll just never forget that this kid had the wherewithal to realize the exact same play was going to be run again, and he got to the spot and made the play, and he won the game. He won the game for them because if he doesn't get a hold of that guy before he gets to the line of scrimmage, when you're 2 yards out, and it may have been even closer than 2 yards, he only needs to get to the 1 and fall forward. And he's in the end zone, so it doesn't matter who comes and piles on him once he's in the end zone. And so that'll be one of the lessons that they take from that game. The other lesson they'll take from that game, this is kind of an aside, Appo got flagged for sitting on the player too long because, again, no timeouts, clock is running. And so they got a personal foul penalty or delay game, whatever it was.
And that could have been deadly. Yes.
Could have been huge. Could have been huge. So that's going to be the first thing Timpson's going to talk about this on Monday.
Yeah, it moved it from the 4 to the 2.
Right.
Could have been huge.
And that's what set it up where you basically you couldn't afford for them to pick up any yardage or you're in the end zone. So 2 big lessons there. One a positive one, the other one a negative one that will become a positive because my guess is you're certainly not going to see an Appo player do that again, and they'll use that as a lesson going forward. So Edge Von Brandt and Malik Bell, my 2 3A helmet stickers.
I always think Thanksgiving dinner at the Von Brandts must be awesome. The football conversations that take place there.
Maybe they'd let us come do the podcast there.
There you go. That's right. We got
listen.
Successful college kids, high school kids, the dad,
the dad's
mama's
coach
cooking
at
up.
Appo,
I mean, we got. I bet you it's a blast there. So for 3A, I got. There's going to be 5 names for my first one. Then I have a kind of a special one, but the Middletown offensive line, and you and I had talked about this, about what to do with them. They're going to get my helmet sticker for 3A this week. Center Joey Miniconzi, Colin Campbell's the left tackle, Brayton Feltz is the left guard, Morgan Davis is the right guard, Dion Parker is the right tackle. Again, they ran for more than 300 yards, and they just dominated the line of scrimmage against Smyrna. And it's just not something you normally see. You don't see a Smyrna defense pushed around like they pushed them around. So they're my 3A helmet sticker. And then this is kind of a special one. I'm kind of going to go back to the 1A level for this. One of the Tatnall assistant coaches, Daniel Primiani, and I should point out there's two guys that every week send me information. Assistant coach at Polytech, Thomas Walker, and Tatnall's Daniel Primiani, and they send me detailed reports of what happened in the game. And Daniel Primiani always includes like a little fun fact. Well, this one was awesome. He says, one little fun side note, a special teams performance that I think you'll appreciate. Both their normal kickers were not there for this game. I don't know why. It doesn't matter why. So their starting offensive guard, Jacob Glazer, handled the kicking duties for the team. He went 1 for 1 on extra point attempts, and he had a 58-yard kickoff that pinned McCain inside the 20-yard line. And after one of the kickoffs, he ran down the field and made the special teams tackle. And this is a big kid. So he also had a tackle for loss on defense. I just thought, Jacob Glazer, for your efforts, taking over the kicking game, doing a great job and doing whatever the team needs to win. And it's funny, Daniel Primiani added at the end, only in 1A football does this stuff happen. And that's the truth, where you got to find parts that you got to insert them wherever you can. But so the Middletown offensive line and Tatnall defensive end, offensive lineman, kicker Jacob Glazer get my last helmet stickers.
Alrighty, there you go. And we'll close out this segment by Marty. I want to let the Von Brants know if I need to bring my own stuffing, I will. I like the simple Stouffer stuffing. I don't want any sausage and all that other
You and
crap
me
that
both,
people
buddy.
put in it. If we need to bring our own stuffing, that'll be Marty and my contribution to
There you
Thanksgiving dinner
go.
at the Von Brants this year. All right, time for the Promotion Zone Player of the Week. Whatever, wherever, and however you want to promote your organization, product, or anything else, Promotion Zone can help you make the right decisions based on your needs and your budget, whether it's apparel, t-shirts, pens, coffee mugs, or something out of the ordinary. Promotion Zone is your one-stop shop for all your branding needs. Celebrating their 15th year in business, they're located right here in Delaware. So you're working with people who understand the value of Delaware business hometown relationships. You can check them out on Facebook at Promotion Zone DE or on their website at promotionzone.biz. Prefer to call them. It's 302-832-8565. That's 302-832-8565. And the best thing is you won't talk to a machine. You'll talk to a person. Promotion Zone, the swag folks since 2009 for all your branding and apparel needs. The Player of the Week gets a T-shirt from Promotion Zone so that they can show off that they were the podcast Player of the Week, and we mail it out to them for each week. And Marty, this week we're going to go with Sal's quarterback, Brady McBride. And yes, Sally's ended up winning that game by a lot, but it wasn't a blowout early on
No.
in the first half. In fact, they had to overcome 3 offsides penalties by their defense, I think on the first drive I read somewhere. But McBride ended up with 5 touchdown passes. He was 16 of 27 for 195 yards. And, it was just a good, solid win for Brady McBride. And we talked back and forth, Marty, about, we could pick a Sally's kid probably every week, at least so
Yep.
far this season. But this was a situation where we thought that they really did. Brady led that team. This is a Sally's team that didn't pick up a first down in the first quarter in their possessions, which probably hasn't happened in a decade.
No.
And so, again, it was how Brady McBride, when you're in a situation like that, sometimes stats don't even matter. It's what the quarterback does to keep the team focused on what the task is at hand.
Yep.
The task here, folks, isn't to get a running clock by halftime. The task is to be ahead at halftime, and that's exactly what they were. So I'll let you, I don't know if you have any more comments on him, Marty.
I was just going to say this was one of your classic. You talked about it earlier with Caesar Rodney. Salesiano is not used to playing Saturday morning games,
Right.
and John Wilson and his team, man, they were ready to go. They fought tooth and nail that entire first half. And credit to them, because Sally's clearly has the bigger talent base right now. And then Brady McBride kind of took over in the second half. He's a kid that really kind of burst onto the scene last year when he was sharing time. Then he had a great game in the state championship game. The other quarterback transferred out. He took over, and he's been the man there. He's done a really nice job managing the offense. He's got a lot of offensive weapons. He does a great job distributing the ball. But this was a breakout, for me, individual performance with the 5 touchdowns for Brady. So congratulations to our Promotion Zone Player of the Week, Brady McBride from Salesianum.
All right, now time for the Diamond Hill Unit of the Week. For more than 20 years, Diamond Hill Incorporated has been serving all of Delaware and the surrounding areas in all things construction, from commercial concrete and site development to residential projects. They have you covered no matter how big or small your project is. Email to info@diamondhillinc.com for more information. That's info@diamondhillinc.com. And Marty, this is another one we struggled with. A lot of choices, and you
Yep.
came up with a good idea for this one, so I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, this one it kind of a little different than what we normally do. We usually pick an offensive line, defensive line, something like that. I'm giving the Diamond Hill Unit of the Week to the entire Caesar Rodney football team for their effort against Hodgson on Saturday. They scored in all three phases of the game: special teams, offense, and defense. This is a game that clearly, I think, to everyone, Hodgson was expected to win this game. Caesar Rodney had since that first win against William Penn, they had really struggled, but Coach Sean Strickland got his guys ready to go early in the morning, that long bus ride up, and these kids played their hearts out. They had to withstand a late Hodgson comeback for the win, but just a great job overall, and it was great to see Caesar Rodney get back in the win column. Not so much if you're a Hodgson fan, of course, but overall, this was just a great team win for Caesar Rodney. So Caesar Rodney is my Diamond Hill Unit of the Week.
All right, let's hope it's the beginning of a turnaround down there, as we
Yes.
talked about for Caesar Rodney. All right, before we head up to talk about next week's games to watch, and of course have the trivia question, Marty, you had some college kids that had some former Delaware college high school players who are now college kids, excuse me, who had some good performances yesterday.
That's right. Delaware State got off to a 17-6 lead yesterday, or excuse me, yeah, yesterday, Saturday. I've got to get my days mixed up. I was up late night putting this stuff together. But former Smyrna High standout Markel Holman for St. Francis yesterday had a phenomenal game, 182 yards, two fourth quarter touchdowns to complete the comeback to beat Delaware State. So a great job by Markel Holman. And then, the guy who's been a mainstay in this category, I always look him up every week now, is Rashawn Lamons at Susquehanna. They moved to 4-1, and this kid is just, he rushed 14 times, 120 yards and a touchdown, had 6 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, had a 30-yard kickoff return. So, again, this kid is doing everything at Susquehanna, but it's just so great to see these kids. And by the way, if you're a Smyrna fan, you got to see the Knight brothers, Wayne and Ymir, last night play for James Madison on ESPN2. Unfortunately, it was an upset loss to Louisiana Monroe, but both of them looked good. There wasn't a lot. The JMU offense had scored 63 points in each in the last 2 games, which hadn't been done in a long time. They were held to under 20 last night, so it was a tough game for them. But the Knight brothers doing a great job for a JMU program that's really starting to make a name for itself at the 1A level.
All right, folks, if you know of kids who played high school football here in Delaware, and there's a lot of them, probably almost
Yes.
100 kids, I would say, are playing high school or college football at the next level. If you know of anybody, let us know. Reach out to us, give us their stats. And you know what? Here's another thing. If you know somebody who's the offensive tackle for a team and they're playing, let us know that too. We want to give them a shout out. They're not going to have stats unless they recover a fumble, maybe, or something like that. But so if you know people who are playing and they're getting minutes, let us know that as well. We know the guys where they're playing. We just don't. It's hard for us to find all this information about
Yep.
where they're playing. And so if you're a parent out there and your kid's a lineman on a college team and they're playing, let us know that, and we'll give them a shout out for sure. All right, it's time to go to our Week 6 games to watch. I'll start, Marty, with 1A. I'm going to say Glasgow at Christiana. And that goes along to your lines of liking to watch teams that are going to be competitive against each other. They're not
Yep.
the standout teams. Glasgow at 1-4, Christiana at 3-2. They've got their best record in years, as we talked about last week, decades almost. And so it's it should be a hard fought game because this is the first time in a while, Marty, that Christiana's got a legitimate shot to beat Glasgow. I look back at some of the scores in the last several years, and several, I say 6+ years, Glasgow's won by 20 or more
Yep.
points. And so this is the first time in a long time, this inter-district rivalry, there's a chance that both teams could win. And I think that's what's going to make it a really good game to watch. If I have the schedule correctly, it's going to be at Christiana, which means it's going to be on a Saturday morning, most likely. So my game, 1A game, is Glasgow and Christiana.
And my 1A game is going to be a Thursday night game, of which there are 6 this week, which I couldn't figure out why there were 6. And then Sean Green reminded me that it's Yom Kippur, which public schools don't like to play during the holidays. So we have 6 games on Thursday. One of them is a 6 p.m. start, and it's Brandywine hosting Indian River. And Brandywine has been drawing some nice crowds. They're having a decent season. This is a test for them. They're at home on a Thursday night. They're going to have a decent crowd. The game, I'm sure, is going to be, I believe it's on their YouTube page, which is where I watch their games, and they've been kind of fun to watch. This is to me, this is going to tell us where Brandywine is, because Indian River is clearly right now among the top two, I would say, in the 1A class. So a test for Isaiah Mays and his kids on Thursday night.
All right, we go to 2A. This was kind of easy for me. Red Lion at DMA. This is going to be on Delaware Live Sports. DMA is 2-3, and after this, they have to play Caravel, three very winnable games. And so, you don't want to be 500 or less and hope to make the playoffs in district or in class 2A, and that's what it would be. Red Lion is at 3-2. Again, they have three winnable games, and then they play Caravel. It's not a must win for Red Lion to get in by any stretch of the imagination, but a win might secure a home field game in that first round, much like we talked about Archmere in their game this week, too. So I'm interested in that Red Lion at DMA game. I think that's going to be a really good one.
And I've got two of them. My first one, I'm going to go back to Thursday again. And this is because of how weird the schedule is on Thursday. It's a 3:30 start, and it is Mount Pleasant hosting Archmere. Mount Pleasant 4-1, Archmere 4-1. Now they've done it against radically different levels of opposition, but to me, this is a great test to see where Jeff Allen and his kids are, because the Archmere team comes in off a big win over DMA. So it's going to be interesting to see how Mount Pleasant is able to handle that, what really is a multifaceted Archmere offense. My second 2A game, and this is sort of more for positioning, I think, than anything else, playoff positioning. It's on Friday at 6 p.m., and it is Milford hosting Woodbridge. Jed Bell's Milford team is 4-1. I think Marvin and Woodbridge are also 4-1, if I'm not mistaken. So this should be a good matchup. It's, again, two teams that love to run the football. So this could be a very quick game,
Right.
but it's also one of those great physical type games to watch. So Milford and Woodbridge on Friday night, and Mount Pleasant and Archmere at 3:30 in the afternoon on Thursday are my two 2A games.
All right, 3A, I'm thinking St. George's at Dover. And here's why, Marty. Right now, I've got St. George's on the bubble of the tier between the lower four and the middle four, for
Yep.
lack of a better explanation there. I have Dover in that bottom tier just because they just won their first game, and they won it against a William Penn team that's in that bottom tier. So this is kind of how I figured this out. St. George's has a win over Hudson and a win over William Penn, which would be in that bottom four right now. Dover's in that bottom four, with St. George's being right on that, tier or that bubble to get out.
Yep.
So whichever of these two teams wins this game, I'm putting up into the playoff, on top of the playoff bubble. Doesn't mean they're going to get into playoffs, but at least for right now. So this is more of a game that's going to tell me more about Dover than anything else, I think.
Yes.
As you said, it's really hard to gauge Dover right now. They've lost to the teams we kind of thought they would lose to. They had a nice win over a William Penn team that's probably not going to be a playoff team. St. George's is one of those teams that I would call a legitimate win at this point in the season if Dover wins it. So that's my 3A game to watch, St. George's at Dover.
And I had two circled, and one was Dover St. George's. And again, same reason. I think those bottom teams, and I don't mean bottom as in bad teams, but those bottom 3A teams that are going to be fighting for what looks like the last two playoff spots, those teams are knocking each other off each week, it seems like. William Penn, Caesar Rodney, they're all knocking everybody off. My other one is Cape Henlopen and Sussex Central, which will be taking place the same time in Cape Henlopen. I think this is a real good gauge of where Mike Frederick and his kids are this season. Sussex Central is going to come in. They're not going to be terribly happy. They're coming off a loss, so I imagine they're going to have a very focused week of practice. Hopefully, Bradley Chavez is back healthy as the starting quarterback. But this could be a potentially fun game. Both these teams are more grinded out. Cape will tend to throw it a little bit more, but Cape Henlopen and Mike Frederick, I'm really curious to see where they stack up in the hierarchy things against Sussex Central on Friday night.
All right, so those are our games to watch the upcoming weekend. Who's going to be on the air? Sean Green with WDEL is going to be at the Appoquinimink game that takes on St. Mark's for sure. He's juggling a radio schedule with the Phillies playoff
Yeah.
schedule. And Marty, after yesterday, the Phillies might be done by then. And it might not be an issue. We'll see. But Sean Green will definitely be have the St. Mark's Appo game for you on WDEL. Delaware Live Sports is going to be at Cape Henlopen for the Sussex Central game. That'll be Benny Mitchell and Jim Tack. And then St. Mark's at Appo, Glenn Frazier and Nick Allison-Andrew will be there. So it's going to be a
Yep.
crowded press box, Marty. I'm glad I have my own little spot up there. It's always good seeing those guys, but I've got my own little spot, and they can argue about where they're going to be from there. Delaware Live Sports, Red Lion at DMA. That'll be Glenn Frazier and Pat Gary Antes. And so that must be on Saturday, I assume, without looking. I assume that's a Saturday. It might even be a
It
Saturday
is the
night
only
game.
Saturday night game.
Is it?
It's
Okay, so
6:30
that'll be
Saturday
fun.
night. Yep.
Yeah, so that'll be a good one there. So that's who you can see on the air, both radio and live streams. Those guys all do a great job. All right, it's time for our Marticelli Restaurant Group trivia question. Marticelli Restaurants, they own the Chesapeake Inn, Klondike Kate's, and La Casa Pasta. All three restaurants are known for their delectable dishes, cozy ambiance, and exceptional service. And thanks to the Marticelli Group, one lucky listener each week gets to each out one of them with a $50 gift card. You can enjoy signature crab cakes and other fresh seafood at the Chesapeake Inn, homemade pastas and seafood specialties at La Casa Pasta, or Klondike Kate's famous cheesesteak, egg rolls, and nachos. We can't thank the Marticelli Group enough for supporting our podcast and, in turn, supporting high school football here in Delaware. All right, Marty, the floor is yours.
Last week, the question was William Penn had been celebrating the 10-year anniversary of their 2014 state title. The question was, who scored the first and last touchdowns of the game for William Penn? The answer was, of course, Reggie Carroll, who was the all-state do-everything back for Marvin Dooley that year at William Penn. And the winner was 302 Sports' Mike Lang.
Wow.
And it's funny, I got a question from some of these guys saying, are we even eligible for this? I'm like, honestly, the only guys who aren't eligible are me and John.
All right.
Anybody else?
And
Hey,
your mother.
everybody's got to do their own research. Yeah. And my mom. That's right. So congratulations to Mike Lang. I already reached out to him. So this week, and again, this is kind of a test of your listening skills in the podcast, but Mount Pleasant, 4-1. When was the last time Mount Pleasant got off to a 4-1 start? John, yes, ruined this question earlier in the broadcast.
The good news is that I already forgot the answer.
That's right.
So people don't bother reaching
There
out
you
to me.
go.
I put my notes away and forgot the answer.
You said something, and we moved on. And 2 sentences later, I looked down at my notes, and I'm like, "Oh my god, that was a trivia question."
And I had forgotten by then already too. So don't
So
reach
Mount
out to me,
Pleasant,
folks.
There you go. So Mount Pleasant and Jeff Allen, great start, 4-1. When was the last time a Mount Pleasant team started 4-1? And get us the answer. We do the drawing. My mom does it every Wednesday at 8:00. You send your answers to the best way to send it to us is to our Gmail account at delhsfootball@gmail.com. That's delhsfootball@gmail.com. You can also send it to John and I's personal accounts. But again, have the answer in by Wednesday at 8 to be eligible for the drawing and a $50 gift card from the Marticelli Group restaurants.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Special thanks to our sponsors, Grain Restaurant, 4 locations in Bear, Lewis, and 2 in Newark, the Marticelli Restaurant Group and their restaurants, Chesapeake Inn, La Casa Pasta, and Klondike Kate's Promotion Zone, the swag folks since 2009 for all your branding and apparel needs. Diamond Hill Incorporated, commercial concrete, site development, and residential projects. Mary Kate Johnston with Remax Associates Real Estate. Dan Rigby, author of The Win Today Planner. Andre L. Photography, excellence from every angle. And of course, the presenting sponsor of the podcast, websitesforsports.com. If you're a sports player, parent, or fan, it's the only website with a schedule of every high school and middle school team, stats, and more. Don't forget to follow us on X and Facebook, and please like and share our podcast to help us spread the word about the wonderful sport of high school football here in Delaware. Available wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Until next time, for Marty Sheehan, I'm John Busby. Have a great sports week.